Hey guys, Chris Dick here. Today I'm going to be taking us through another part of our series for SharePoint and project management. And in particular, I'm going to be talking about an element of project management called action items. Now, action items are not tasks, but they are parts of what's called the minutes of meeting. And we're going to be going through some of the features that link these two together. I will also have another video on how to set up a minutes of meeting list that will allow you to track the results of meetings. So in this list, what you can see is these are items that let's say that in a meeting we talked about this one here, and uh, test one just happens to be, I'm just testing version history, just making sure it works. Something that we had in the meeting, and then today I had a comment. It doesn't appear to be working. Now, this would be something that would be fairly common in a meeting. You'd have a discussion about an element of a project, and then you would decide whether what to do next. So let's imagine we start from scratch here. I'm having a discussion in a meeting, and the discussion is about a feature called API. Okay, we're going to continue on with this as though this is a real discussion within a meeting. In the meeting, um, I was assigned to the API task. Okay, now just remember, this is not a task per se that I'm being assigned to. It's just something that is my thing that I'm discussing. Okay, the issue status in this case is active. If I had come to a resolution on my issue, I can say that it was resolved, and at some point it would move to the closed phase. All right. Closed would essentially mean there's no more point of discussion. It's off the table. It's not going to be on the agenda items. And in which case, if it comes back into the agenda items, it gets marked as active. Okay. The priority, you can set it to high, normal, low, whatever you choose. It's always good to put a description here. Let's say, should we host the API in on Azure? Let's do that. Okay. So this is the point of discussion here. So the title is API. Should we host the API on Azure? Is the point of discussion. There's a few categories here that you can make up on your own. I haven't made any changes to these yet, so you can likely delete those categories. But as we walk through the video, I may just delete them. Now, related issues, if you have a related issue in here, let's say this is related to issue test 2, you can set it in there and say that it's related. Um, let's say my comments are, I will check costs. Okay. And sometimes when the minutes of meetings are being taken, it might be something like this. Chris will check cost because it was entered by someone who's actually taking the minutes of meeting. You can set a due date for this. In other words, Chris is going to check the costs for the next meeting. Let's say that's next week. We can set a time if you want. It's not totally necessary. Perhaps it is. Maybe the meeting is at 4 o'clock and I want to make sure that I have it set up. So we'll do that. Now, the other thing that you can do is relate it back to a task that is in the task list. So in this case, I might put it to the deliverable called API. But in particular, this type of question here is, should we host on Azure? This would actually be related to the design phase because I've decided on the requirements. Now the design phase is actually asking me to figure some things out as far as where we're hosting, what's the environment, how much are things going to cost. So that's our design, and we're going to relate it to that task. All right. The last thing that you can do is add attachments, and this is really interesting because if you have things like documents that support the questions that are going to be asked, you can simply add it into here as action items as well, supporting documentation. So if I click on save, you'll now see that the API action item is sitting in the list. Now at this point, you probably won't really recognize why we have these action items until you actually have the minutes of meeting set up. And what I will be doing in my next video is creating a minutes of meeting list that will allow us to do this. So let's get started on creating our new action items list. How did we do this? So in this, we can start off with a special kind of app here. This is called an issue tracker app. It's a great little app that comes with SharePoint. If you just do a search for issue, you should find it. And when I select the issue tracker, it's going to ask me for a name. And if I go over to this tutorial that I'm working on right now, it says to enter action items as the name. So we'll click on create. Now for this one, there's not a lot of updates to do because the issue tracker actually has all the features we need to make this work. Now, one of the things that I have mentioned before, I've often moved to the classic mode when using these types of lists, more because they have features that are readily available to them. So you can certainly manage that. In some of the tutorials I've done before, I've adjusted version settings, but the issue tracker has automatically added version settings in there so you can track the history of an item, and I'll demonstrate that in a moment. And then when we're complete, we will add email notifications. So whenever someone is assigned to an item, it will automatically send an email to that person so that they understand and recognize that they are part of that action item. Now, the one task or the one column that's asking to add here is called related task. So this is a lookup column, okay? And I'm going to be making some additions here through the columns. And we just go down to the columns section and then click on create column. Now this is fairly simple. We've done this before. If you've been following along in this series, you should be fairly clear on how to do most of this. I click on lookup and that reconfigures my screen here. Okay. It also says that that I should put in a description. It's actually the wrong description, so I'm not going to copy that in, but let's just think about what we're doing here. This would be a task that relates to the action item. Something simple, but you can get the idea. I'll make sure I update that tutorial with the proper description later on. Now, it's not a required field because we don't necessarily always have a task that relates to this. This may be an idea that was bounced around in a meeting, and it may not have anything that's actionable yet, but it's something that we need to talk about. Okay, we're going to grab our information from the MRP high-level task list. If you haven't got that already, you'll probably want to go back into the video series to watch that one and get the appropriate information to do that. You'll need to set that one up. All right. Now, let's just take a look at what we need here. It says allow multiple values. Okay. And the reason here is that you may want to be able to select many tasks. So you may say, these are the tasks that are all related here. Maybe you're asking, do we need to do all these things, right? And someone says, you only need to do that one, but the other two you don't need to do. So things like that. They're points of discussion. Again, this is what action items are, okay? So we just click on OK. Now, I mentioned earlier that we have this category column. Now, you can choose to delete it. If you'd like to delete it, you just click on category, and I'm going to delete it for the purpose of discussion here. Sorry, I went through the wrong spot. And oh, well, look at that. It doesn't want me. It doesn't allow me to delete it. So we'll just keep it. But either way, if you ever have any reason to change these categories, you can very easily change them. There's, maybe you want to delineate some reason for why this action item is there, but this would be the appropriate space to do that. Okay, so we'll cancel that out. All right, now let's go into our action items now. Okay, and you can see that we're in the new mode here. Okay, now the classic mode, most of the time it's right down here. If you want to return to that, you click on Return to Classic SharePoint. Okay, and in this case, for whatever reason, I seem to have to refresh the screen to do that, but that's not a big deal. If I do that, I click on the list. I've got this. I've got all these functions available to me from here, and I haven't made any changes to the way the list displays like I have before. But if you do want to do that, you can always go into here, click on Advanced Settings. If you want to always make it show so that it displays in the classic experience, you just click on this down in List Experience and click on OK. So it will always appear in that way. Now, we don't actually need to do that right now, so I'm going to just stay where we are right now. Now, let's think about what we have here. So we click on the new item. Okay, and we're going to kind of duplicate the issues that we had before. So let's say that we are talking about the topic of API. Okay, I am assigned to this. All right, and let's say we were deciding on should we host in Azure. Okay, now you may have something else, something more specific, but that's the way I'm going to go with it right now. As you can see, our categories doesn't really make sense there, category 2, so we can probably delete that at some point. We can still set the due date. As you can see, it's a very different interface if we go with the classic experience. Let's say our due date is for next week, and related task, let's say it's the API design, okay? And that's a top level task, but perhaps I need to have something like this where it's a little bit more specific. That would be an actual task. And again, if you've been following my series, you know that that's a task that's been used before. So we don't have any related issues yet, but when I save, I will now have related issues. Okay. Now, one thing that I didn't do yet, and I'll do that right now, is I'm going to set up the send email. Okay. And what that will do is as soon as I am assigned to an item, it will send me an email. And it's a great little feature. It just keeps people a little more accountable for what they're doing. So if I click back on here, okay, I see a details view here. If I go to edit the item now, if you recall, I have comments here, and let's say Chris will look into pricing. This is sort of like the next meeting that we've done. Okay, I'll click on save. All right. Now when I come back to that again, I will have the comments. And if you see here, when I click on edit, I've got my previous comment there. Okay, so this is keeping versions of things as I make edits. Found the pricing looks great. Okay, so we'll click on save. Now what's interesting about the issue tracker is that it also tracks the version history. So if I click on version history, what it's going to do is tell me is what happened here. So it says in version 1, I set up the task. In version 2, I made a comment. In version 3, I made another comment. So these are also really valuable things to track. Because sometimes, again, people will make mistakes. They'll do something incorrect and back out. Maybe they mixed something up. You can at least go back into your version history and track what happened to it, and maybe return to that previous version. Okay. Now let's add in one more issue here. Okay, I'm just going to call this test 2. Okay, I'm not going to assign it to anybody, but I'm going to just set up everything just as I normally would. It's not going to have a due date. All it is going to have is just the title. Okay, so there's nothing to be said here. I can even put a description, and this will, again, if by doing this, it will create another version. So let's say just checking in to see if this feature works. Okay. Again, this might be just a topic of discussion within a meeting, and when we build the minutes of meeting list, you'll see that we have these tasks that are available to as points of discussion in a meeting. Okay, so that is it for this tutorial. This is a nice short one. Again, with having that list, that issue tracker list predefined and really set up, most of the things that we ever needed were there. I think that you'll find this feature very helpful in tracking anything that relates to your meeting minutes. Thanks a lot, guys. Remember to like and share, and we'll catch you in our next video. Thanks a lot.